Roxanne Carter, and this is the center compass of my 2020 sampler. So this is the sampler right here, and as you can see, it can be the compass in the middle, or if you don't want to use it as the center compass, you can make a wall hanging out of it, or a table topper. So this is a paper pieced project, and it really isn't that difficult because the pieces are large and it's a very easy construction method, I think. So what we first do is we take our master copy that I've given you, and you take that and you layer it with 4 pieces of freezer paper. These are 11 inches wide by 18, which is what freezer paper is, 18 off the roll. And so you staple it in on your freezer paper, at least 2 staples on each side if possible. You want to you don't want to just staple the background, you want to staple the actual piece. So once you get them stapled, you can separate them into 2 different groups here. And so I have the smaller piece, which is what we're going to start with, and you want to make sure you take the thread out of your machine. And so get that gone. And we're going to perforate the inside 2 lines of the small one, and then the end of the inside lines of the big one. Not these outside 2 lines, just the inner 2 here. So we're going to just take and we're going to sew right on those lines without any thread, and that just perforates those edges there for us so that we know where our pattern is. This is using the freezer paper piecing method. And get one more here. There we go. And now we're going to take and we're going to cut them out on the outside line. I use a rotary cutter because I found scissors tend to take and bend the paper inward. So I would just lay my ruler right on there, and we're going to then just cut right through the edges. It does not hurt the rotary cutter to cut through the freezer paper. So I will do that all the way around, just like I have on this one, and it's ready to go. Okay, once you get them all perforated, then you're going to take the staples out of your papers, and we're going to see we've got all of our, I marked all my pieces according to the paper that I gave you, the master. And so now we're going to lay out our pieces. Remember when we're working with freezer paper that we're always working in reverse. So we want to lay our pieces out like this. So I have my 4-inch background square, my 3 by 4.5 inch accent 3 piece, and my 3 1/4 by 7 inch accent 2 piece, or 2 piece, yes. I found this to be an easier way of putting it together. You don't actually have to use the freezer paper to do this one. You can, if you want to, you could iron the freezer paper down to the wrong side of your fabric and then add your background piece and everything. But I found that this would, for me, was much easier and quicker. I could just take my background piece, lining it up at the bottom. I'm going to sew down there, and then I'm going to add this piece, matching it up at the top, and sew down. So let me do that for you. Okay, so you do want to remember to thread your machine. So just go ahead and re-thread it. And then we're going to sew our seam. So we're going to sew right along there. Okay, so now that we've sewn our seam, we're going to press it over to the accent piece. And you can do that with your fingernails, or you can do it with the iron. And now we're going to add the next piece, and the next piece is our 3 1/4 by 7 accent 2 piece, and we're going to put it right side together, lining up at the very top of the background, and we're going to sew that seam. And now we're going to press that one over to the accent 2. Now that we have our pieces sewn, we can take our freezer paper piece, and you want to fold it on those perforated lines right there and then right here. So just fold it right on those lines. We know where those lines are, so that we can line up those lines onto our seams. So this one here is going to go to our accent 3-piece. So we put that perforated line there, and then we bring this one down so that the perforated line is right on the seam there, and that one is on that seam like that. And I usually do this on the ironing board so that I can then iron this right down. So let me take this over and do that. So get that right on there. And this one's right there. And then now make sure that you want to make sure this tip right here is actually on that seam. And then we iron this down. And you can see that there is some waste with paper piecing, but you're going to get nice sharp points when we're done. So now we're going to take it over and we're going to cut all the way around the outside edge of our paper with our rotary cutter. So we're going to trim it all out on the outside line. If you have trouble cutting that curve, you can always use a ruler here and then just kind of curve it around as you go. Just like that. So now we're going to take and pull the freezer paper off, and we can reuse this freezer paper piece again for the next color group. Okay, so now that I've trimmed it out and I peeled my paper off, I can reuse that same paper to go down on another one. We need to make 4 of this combination, and then we need to make 4 of this combination, the other 2 accents. So this is accent 4 with accent 1. And so that's how we're going to make that one. So we'll do the same thing again. We'll sew this one here, then we'll sew that piece on. So what we want when we're done is we want 4 of accent 1 and 4 and 4 of 2 and 3. So our next pieces are our big pieces. This is the nice big chunky pieces that makes it easy to paper piece, our outside ring. And so we're going to perforate the inside lines again, just like we did without any thread for the other group. And then we will make sure that all the pieces are perforated. And then I again marked the pieces with the pencils, showing you how they were going on there. So just to make it a little easier on you when you're making them. And again, you only need 4 because we're going to do 4 with one color group and then 4 with another color group, but we can use the same papers at least 2 to 3 times. So the next thing I want you to do is I want you to take your accent 3 and 4 pieces, which are the 3 by 8 pieces, and we're going to sew them together lengthwise, and then you're going to press that seam open, just like this. Okay, so that we have our pieces ready to put our paper down to. Again, we're going to fold on that center line there, and you can use a card or your add a quarter plus ruler here that I've got, and we're just going to kind of fold right on that perforated line, and we're going to then iron this down. Okay, so I've taken the staples out. I've got all my freezer paper pieces here, and I've marked it. The one thing you want to do is you want to, before we start sewing, we want to get rid of the shiny paper on the freezer paper. We have to do this because the presser foot will stick to the plastic coating. We didn't have to do that on the first group because we already sewed the pieces together before we put the freezer paper down to trim it out. But this time we have to take this over to the ironing board and just iron it down with a hot iron and then peel it off so that you do not have any glossiness on our paper. You can see the glossiness is gone. You do not want to do this on a wool mat because the fibers of the wool mat will come up on your paper. I found that the hard way. So I'm going to take my perforated paper that I folded, and I'm going to place it down right on that center seam I want to leave a little bit of room at the top. And again, let's take this over to the iron to do it. Our motto in freezer paper foundation piecing is we sew, we press, we trim. Well, so we're going to start with pressing actually on this one. We've sewn, now we're going to press. So we're going to press our paper right to that piece. I line up that perforated line right on that seam, and now I'm going to put my iron right down to the paper on those two pieces. Now we're going to fold back between our pieces, and we're going to trim away to 1/4 inch. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to fold it back between the pieces 2 and 3. I'm going to fold there, right on that perforated line, get it right on that line. And I'm going to use my add 1/4 ruler. I'm going to place the add 1/4 ruler right on that fold of the paper, and I'm going to then trim that away. I'm going to now grab my 6 1/4 inch background square, and I'm going to line up the top edge there, and I'm going to line up all the way down, and now I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So we're going to sew right next to the fold of the paper, not on the paper at all. So we just want to stick right next to that fold of the paper. All the way past that perforated line. So now we're going to take it over to the ironing board. We're going to fold the fabric out first so that I don't have any foldovers, and then I'm going to add the iron to the freezer paper to make it hold down. So now that piece is on, we're going to go over and trim to the next piece. And put my background down, line up my top edges, and I will sew that seam just like I did the other one. Okay, so now we're ready. We're ready for our accent, our number 5 piece, which is our accent 1 piece, and we're going to fold our paper back on that line. So it's kind of nice to have an edge there to do that again. So we fold it right on the line there, and now we're going to use our add 1/4 ruler on the outside edge here, and we're going to trim this even. And now we're going to add our accent 1 piece. Our accent 1 piece is our 4 by 9 inch piece. We're going to take and line so that we have about 1/4 inch above the paper. You don't want to line it all the way out, but we're going to line it up there so that we have at least 1/4 beyond the perforated line at the bottom, and we do. I made the pieces big enough, and now we're going to sew this seam. If you find that your pressure foot is still sticking to the freezer paper, you can either use a Teflon foot, or you can take another piece of plain paper and press it right, or lay it right down on top of that seam there, and it will sew just fine. Just mostly you never need it, but just in case you are sticking to that and it gathers up, that's what I would do. Just add a little piece of paper there, okay? So remember, our motto is sew, press, and trim. So now we're going to go over and we're going to press this down from the front side first, and then put the iron to the paper. You must put the iron to the paper to make it stick. And now we're going to fold back on the last perforated line on number 6 piece. And we're going to trim that one and add our main print piece. So we're at our 1/4 ruler. Always sew, press, trim. You do not need to clean up the outside edges until we're all done, unless you want to. add this now. We're going to line this up at the top so that we have enough at the bottom. Kind of just center the piece of fabric, this on the background piece or the main piece, and we're going to sew that seam. Now we're going to press, and this one I press again from the front side first so I have no foldovers, and then I put my iron to the freezer paper to hold it down. Now we're going to cut all the way around the outside edge. One thing you do want to make sure of is that this point right here, you get a nice point here. And I can bring this one over. Once I take the paper off, I can kind of bring this over, and let me show you how to do that. Because that will happen to you. Better to catch it early, but I forgot to show that to you. But if we just take this one here, and we just roll this one over and take just a little bit deeper seam right there, that's gonna make that center just perfect. And so I'm just gonna mark it with my thumbnail there, and I'm gonna go in and I'm going to fix that little bit, and that will help you. So just to show you that we're not always perfect. But just angle it right down into the seam. And then you have your more perfect point there at the top. I shouldn't have taken the paper off until I trimmed it, but that's okay. We can go ahead and iron the paper back down now, and then I'll trim it out. Okay, so once we've taken the papers off, we've trimmed them, everything is nice and clean, nice and neat. We're gonna then make 4 more of the same type of thing with our accent 2 piece. Same exact layout, same thing. By using the papers twice, we can do it. So then you just iron them down, and then we're just going to cut it out. There's our 2 pieces. Okay, so I want to show you how we're going to construct this. It really isn't that hard. This piece here goes right here, and this one would go right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew these 2 together to make this piece. Then we're going to sew the other 2 pieces together. Then we'll sew this here, and then we'll add our background piece. So we're basically making just 4 corners exactly the same. I'm taking my accent 1 of the small piece to the accent 2 of the larger piece, and I'm going to put this one on top of here. I do that by folding the center, the little piece in half, creasing it, and then I do the same thing with the top. I crease it, fold it in half. I am then going to take my inside curve, my smiley face, and place it right there matching my center. And then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put it around to the end here and make that even there. This is a very gentle curve. And then I'm going to pin that. And then I'm going to come around and do the same thing on the other end. If you need more pins, you can certainly pin one there and one here, just to even that in. You see it's going to be very easy curve to sew. So now we'll sew that with a 1/4 inch seam. And of course my machine's, there we go. a little bit more. There we are. Oops, one more pin. On one of them, you're going to press the seam down. On the other one, we're going to press the seam up so that the two will butt into each other here. So now I'm going to go sew this one. Okay, on this one here, I'm going to press the seam down. Press the seam down on this one. And on this one, I'm going to press the seam up. So now we're going to take these two and we're going to sew them together. I'm going to put my accent 1 over here, my 2 here. So I'm putting them together like this, just as I have here, 1 and 2. So now I'm going to put these two together, and there's one place that we want to pin for sure. And if we have to take a little deeper seam, we can, or whatever it takes. You want to put the pin through the junction right there and line it up to the pin right there, where that one junction is. And because those two seams are opposing each other, that's going to be a much gentler place to pin and to sew. I always leave one pin standing up and pin the other one. And now we're going to pin the points and the top. And then that's going to be what we have to do to get this to go together. When you're matching, the other place you need to match is a 1/4 inch down on this one to a 1/4 inch there on that point right there where this is pressed. And make sure that's pressed all the way over and then match it. Even if it doesn't match at a 1/4 inch, like this one isn't going to be quite a 1/4, you want to make sure you get that junction. See, this one's a little bit wider, then this is a little bit narrower, just how we trimmed our pieces. And now we're going to sew that little bit there to get that to line up where it crosses over at that 1/4 inch point. Come on, machine, there you go. Okay, so now that looks good. I'm going to take it over the iron, and this is one seam that I am going to press open just because of all the bulk that's in here. You don't want to press it to one side or the other. It's just better if you press this seam open. It is bulky right there at that junction. But it does help to have that seam pressed open. And there is our 1/4. So I'll show you how it goes in the quilt. And it would go right there. Okay, so you also in your pattern have the background template. What you need to do with that is we take it and we cut it and we put the two pieces together with a piece of tape matching up the perforated lines. So I've matched up the two perforated lines on top of each other, taped both sides, and then you can pin this down to the 16-inch strip of our background. And this template should be 16 inches, so my piece is just a little bit bigger. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to cut 2 pieces out right on the outside edge here. And I'm just going to very slowly go around this. If you need to use a ruler, you can. And we'll cut there, and then you can take pins out, but I want to show you that you can now place this one right here and cut another one right there. So you get your 4 pieces of your background for your compass out of this one piece of fabric. Okay, so now we have one of our background pieces. We're going to take and fold it in half, and we're going to do just what we did with our little centers. We're going to crease the middle of that. And I am then going to place it on that center seam right there. So right sides together, match your creases, pin that, and then pin the ends even. And then just ease this one in, and it will just very gently ease, and use as many pins as you need to get that to flow around. This nice gentle 1/4 inch seam here, taking the pins out as I get to them, keeping my edges even. It's a nice gentle curve, there's nothing to be afraid of. Okay, now that I've got my seam all sewn, I'm going to press the seam out to the background piece. And there is 1/4 of our compass. And if you are going to use it for the center of our sampler, then we would not put the borders on it. But if you want to put the borders on it, it will make about a 38-inch quilt. This itself is 31 inches. And so putting your borders on there will make it a little bit bigger if you want to use it for a wall hanging or a table topper. But as you can see, all my seams are pressed the way I said. They're pressed open here, and curves going up. So 4 curves together and you get your circle. It's not that hard. Hope you enjoy the compass.